January 8th, 2024. We're so excited to see all you popping in and joining us for whatever time that you can. I've had a lot of people say to me this last year, 2024 and more. So looking forward to more awesome excitement from everyone and adventures. And you're going to find the agenda and a PowerPoint in our chat room. And one of the things that we're asking is that you go ahead and give any comments about 2024 that you'd like to share with us, something positive that's happened for you or you're anticipating coming up in the coming year. So looking forward to hearing some of the things that you're working on and what you're excited about. Welcome to the Accelerating Innovation first meeting for 2024. My name is Kathy Stovall, and I am the Accelerating Committee Innovations Chair. And you may hear us refer as AISC, just in case somebody's going, what are they talking about? Accelerating Innovation is AISC also, we abbreviate. And we're so happy that all of you could join us in addition to our committee members. We also have the Vibrant Learners, VLE, and we have Bold New Futures, BNF. We use those acronyms a lot in education, so don't want anybody to get lost or confused about what we're talking about. In addition, we also have staff and facilitators from each one of the committees, as well as council leadership. And we are excited because one of the things that we're doing is our cross-cultural communication, cross-community cross-committee communication and collaboration. So that's why you may see some people, especially for our AISC committee members, you may be wondering, why are so many people on? We invited people from all of our committees to join us so that we can share and bring about new ideas and complete the work that we had planned on. So last year, our council and committee established meeting norms, and we're going to talk about those very quickly. I want to briefly remind everybody of our norms and how we wrote those norms to be inclusive of all of our participants to support collaborative efforts and effective communication. So our principal engagement, things that we're looking at is good intentions of everyone. We want to strive to be inclusive of our diverse committees, as well as our diverse perspectives. We're looking at the various group sizes at times. So you may go into a group chat or you may go into a breakout room. That's because we felt that those are things that will help and support you, as well as things that people felt would help and support. All members have a chance to be heard. That's important to us, and that the constraints are respected in terms of the times that we have for our meeting. Our meeting technology, again, we're using different technology each time we meet, and we hope that that works for you. We encourage everyone to use a live camera on virtual meetings to encourage members to engage productively in our meetings and to allow other members to read nonverbal clues. Some of us have different ways of cluing people into what we're thinking. We generally use the hand icon for our virtual meetings to indicate our interest in contributing to a conversation. And we're recording our meeting, and with the transcript will be provided for future viewing of our meeting. So those are some of the things that we're looking at when we look at the principles of our engagement. But as far as our committee is concerned, we're also revisiting our committee norms and starting our meeting on time, creating an agenda, which you will find that you have and we provided in advance, participation in the process overall, what we're hoping to look for. And we are hoping that we will all monitor our conversations in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, being respectful of what everyone else has to say and has to share. I think that's it in terms of following the roadmap, following what we're going to be doing. Jennifer Stafford will now take time to go over our agenda and give you a little bit of a roadmap of how we planned out the meeting. And one of the things I really want to emphasize is we know that you may not be able to stay for the entire meeting, or some of you may be joining late or coming and going. We are excited just to have you be a part of it. And we hope that you feel good about contributing, no matter how much time you can contribute to this meeting. So again, go to the chat room, drop your ideas in the chat room for things that you want to share as we have our discussion. But right now, we want to hear from you. How's your 2024 going? Jennifer?
Hi, good afternoon. And again, welcome to the Accelerating Innovation Standing Committee meeting. I'm Jennifer Stafford. I am the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And we welcome you, whether you're an Accelerating Innovation member, a Bold New Future committee member, a Vibrant Learning Experience member, or facilitator. We're so excited that you're here, as well as our staff from the Kentucky Department of Education. Our goal for today and our hope is that each of you participate fully in the meeting. We have lots of good conversations and explorations that we're going to do today. A little bit about where we've been and how we've gotten here. So for those of you that are not as familiar and haven't been with the Accelerating Innovation Committee, so that you know how we got to this point. We had worked for over a year as a standing committee, and we have done a lot of learning in the past year. And that includes, we started out early in 2023, looking at assessment systems and different accountability systems from various places. We, as a committee, broke into different work streams. We had a work group that looked at particularly accountability systems and assessment systems outside Kentucky and past and current systems inside Kentucky. So we learned a lot about the different types of assessments and the different types of accountability components, both inside and outside of Kentucky. We learned a lot from that research. Our outside Kentucky group looked at other states within the United States, like Illinois and Colorado, other places, even foreign other nations. They looked at Singapore, Finland, and other nations to learn what's happening there. And then the inside Kentucky group really researched on the past and dug deep into CARA and the components of CARA and the characteristics and qualifications that were needed within that system. So we've done a lot of learning to get to this point. After we completed the research and wrote a report, within that report, there were design principles. And we have 12 design principles that we're going to talk more in depth about the first 3 of those design principles later in this meeting. We looked after our midterm report and we looked at prototyping different accountability models. And we've tried to generate some different ideas and different thoughts around how to hold schools and districts accountable for the learning that takes place within the system. So then we came into November in the COOL Council meeting, and we had a lot of really exciting work that happened during that November convening. And we got really into a place that we have some ideas that we're ready to take forward and bring about deeper conversations. So that kind of puts a context for our work for today. And that has been a situation that we have worked toward getting our students at the center of our accountability system, and that we want to take into account students and their decision-making, and have them be agents of their own learning. So we're going to talk first today about how that is currently happening in our current accountability system, in an indicator that we call post-secondary readiness. So Shara Savage and Holly Tracy are going to be here with us and take us into a deeper dive into the understanding of the post-secondary readiness indicator. After that, we'll look in turn to Sarah Snipes and Karen Perry for examples of vibrant learning experiences, and they're going to take us through the definition of vibrant learning experiences and give us some practical, real-world illustrations of what vibrant learning experiences are. Then after those learning pieces of learning about the options students have in post-secondary education, and or the indicator, then in looking at the vibrant learning experiences, then we're going to engage in brainstorming options. We're going to have some large group and some small group, and actually some individual time frame for us to generate ideas and our own thinking. We're going to have some technology, as Kathy mentioned. We're going to have obviously the chat here in Zoom, but we're also going to have a Jamboard where that you can identify questions and put down your thoughts and ideas, or any comments that you have, that we can capture those good thoughts and your reflections on that. Then we'll turn and reflect on some options and some ideas that are being discussed. And finally, we'll talk about next steps and what that could possibly be over the next few months. So we're looking again today to continue this high-level discussion that we left in November, where we talked about a systems of systems design that explores the integration of a menu of options approach. So that system of systems is a term that we've been using a lot, that is not as completely defined yet as far as what a system could be, because that's what we're here to do, is to generate those ideas. But a system of systems design is similar to what we have here in Kentucky already, where the state puts parameters around the system, but then the individual districts have the opportunity and the authority within that to provide a system for their students that is unique to their local community and their local district. So a system that the state would provide parameters, and then the local districts would have the wherewithal to make decisions within those parameters. Now, we have something similar to that already in Kentucky in our graduation rate. Not our graduation rate, but our graduation requirements. Our graduation requirements, the state puts the parameters around those. There are so many classes of English and math and science, social studies, and other requirements. The state puts those parameters. And then each of the local districts have their own requirements to meet those graduation requirements for their local students. So a system of systems around the accountability system is what the current discussion is. And then allowing a menu of options similar to those that we have in the post-secondary readiness indicator right now. Menu of options would be some listing of what local districts could possibly use to meet that system parameters. So with that, let me pause and see if there are any questions or anything in the chat. And again, we really encourage everyone to be engaged, participate in the discussion today because we're here. It's a working session. This is the first time that we've tried a working session in the middle of a work day. We're so glad that you're here with us, and we want you to participate fully, engage with your other members, and engage with the facilitators and KDE staff, so that at the end of the day, that we have a collective thought around this system of systems and a menu of options. So at this point, I'm going to go. Susan, if you go to the next slide, I'll introduce Shara Savage and Holly Tracy, two consultants from the Kentucky Department of Education who are well-versed in the post-secondary readiness indicator. Shara is a consultant in the Office of Assessment and Accountability in our division. Actually, Shara is the manager now. She has recently gotten a promotion and is the branch manager here in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. And Holly Tracy is from the Office of Career and Technical Education. So I'll turn it over to these two ladies and ask if you have any thoughts as they move along their presentation. Please put it on the Jamboard that you can link here to on the slide. So I will turn it over to.
I'm going to drop the Jamboard link into the chat box for them. And that's just the first slide is a place where we can take some notes while we're listening, if we'd like.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So Shara or Holly?
I'll be going first. Thank you. So yes, hello everyone. I'm glad to be with you. My name is Shara Savage, as Jennifer said, and I'm a branch manager in the Office of Assessment Accountability. And Holly Tracy has joined me. She will be assisting me with the career readiness portion of the post-secondary readiness indicator. So if we could go to the next slide there. Yeah. And to the next one. So what is post-secondary readiness? So it is a required knowledge, skill, and disposition for students once they leave high school. So their next adventure, whether it be they go to college or they have a career. And it's for any student who is slated as a graduate, grade 12, or the graduates that are in grade 12. And it is required that they have either have the regular diploma or an alternative high school diploma, and meet one type of readiness, whether it be a benchmark in the academic world or in career. So, at the next slide, please. And here is, I just wanted to show you the Senate Bill 59 in its entirety. It was last updated in 2022. And it requires that post-secondary readiness for each high school student be measured by one of the following. Now, Holly and I are going to break down each component of this briefly for you. So we'll just move on, and we're going to break this down for you. Now, before we break it down for you, I just wanted to show you that the post-secondary readiness indicator is just one of 6 state indicators in the accountability system. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so now I'll share with you the academic readiness portion of the piece. So again, Senate Bill 59, it requires that a student meet one benchmark. So a student meeting or exceeding a college readiness benchmark on a college admissions exam or a college placement examination that is approved by Council of Post-Secondary Education, that student would have met that indicator for the career, for the academic side of it. Now, this is probably the most important slide for you, because this shows you the multiple ways a student who has chosen that academic piece of it, they can, there's 7 exams to choose from if they have chosen the academic side of it, that they can meet. They can take it the ACT, the SAT, the Coyote, the GED, college readiness, the AccuPlacer, ALEX, or the EdReady. And so as long as they meet just one of those benchmarks. So for example, the student says, I'm going to meet post-secondary readiness by taking the ACT. If they just receive a 20 in reading, then they would have met the post-secondary readiness piece for that student would have. So that is the academic portion of it. Now I'm going to turn it over to Holly, and she's going to go into the career readiness portion of it.
Thank you, Shara. As I mentioned, my name is Holly Tracy, and I am the data manager for the Office of Career and Technical Education. And today I'm going to be talking about the career readiness indicators. So to be career ready, there are 5 indicators. So first is completing a end of program assessment or an EOP. Second is completing 1 CTE dual credit class. Third is earning an industry certification. And fourth is completing an apprenticeship, or you get a track certificate. You can get a track pre-apprenticeship or a track youth apprenticeship. And then fifth, and which is our newest accountability indicator for career readiness, is completing a co-op or internship or some type of experience-based work. And that was new as of the 21-22 school year. So we're still getting that portion up and running for the accountability system. Next, please. Great. Thank you. Okay, so we'll concentrate right now on the EOPs. So EOPs is an end of program assessment, and it comes with an articulated credit, which means the student will get credit for that EOP at the school that they choose to go to. That is, if that there is an agreement in place for that articulated credit at that post-secondary school. So a student must reach CTE concentrator status in order to sit for an EOP. This means that they need to have 2 or more credits on their transcript in their career pathway. There's also a list here that I've linked at the bottom for the valid CTE EOPs for the 23-24 school year. This list is consistently updated year to year to make sure that the EOPs are valid and that they are of value to those that are earning those EOPs. Next. Thank you. All right, so dual credit. So a student can earn obviously an academic dual credit or a CTE dual credit. A CTE dual credit, pretty much any CTE class can be made into a dual credit class, as long as that there is an agreement between the high school and the higher education institute. So there is a valid course list that I have linked here at the bottom of all the current CTE dual credit course codes. It is up to the district on how they want to use that dual credit course code. So on that list, there is a course code that is corresponding to the program area. And so it's up to that district to decide which course code best aligns to the dual credit course that student will be taking. In order for dual credit to be considered for accountability and for the student to be career ready, then they must get a C or higher in this dual credit class, and it must be a state approved dual credit course code used. Next, please. All right, third, our industry certifications. So a student can sit or earn an industry certification. It could be one certification or it could be stacked credentials, which is multiple certifications in order to earn that cert. So for accountability, a normal industry certification carries a weight of 1 point. And a high demand industry certification carries the weight of 1.25 points. So a school will get more accountability points or more weight if they have more high demand industry certifications. And what high demand means is that it is something that is in the workforce considered much more prevalent. And below or at the bottom, there is a link to the valid industry certification list. Now, this list is updated quarterly, and the list is decided on, it goes through our program area consultants, and then it is gone through KWIB, and then they are the ones that decide, does this go on the list or does it not? And so they also goes through approval process of removing industry certifications that are no longer considered a credential of value. So next. Okay, apprenticeships. So our track apprenticeships. This is something that has been around for a bit, but I feel like it's being taken more seriously in the CTE world. A student, it's kind of like an internship, but a student receives a track certificate, and having an apprenticeship, let's say with Arts Electric here in town, that student, after they graduate, they have a job there, if you will, after high school. And so this looks, great for them in high school and post-secondary. They're making money right out of high school, and they are earning the education during that apprenticeship after high school to be able to continue learning. And this has gone through the Labor Cabinet for Registered Apprenticeships. So this is something that goes through a specific approval process once that student has received that track certificate. Next, please. Okay, last indicator that is new as of 21-22 is the co-op internship. So as of 21-22, I said this is new to the accountability system, and a student must complete 300 or more hours in a co-op or internship, and it has to have been a successful experience. So say a student is completing 300 or more hours, but wasn't doing anything all day, and the employer was like, that was not a good experience. So that would mean that that student did not pass it. It was not successful. So it has to be 300 hours or more, and it must have been successful. There is an FAQ document that is very helpful that I have linked here on this slide. It includes the statute, it includes the state course code that are eligible for work-based learning. It includes the work-based learning manual, and includes a link to the career readiness work-based learning data standard that gives you step-by-step instructions. So that FAQ document is kind of like a catch-all for everything. And I do want to mention that for those students who are completing a work-based learning experience or a co-op or internship that are not aligned to an approved course code, that are not in that eligible course code list on that FAQ document, there is a requirement that they need to submit an application of the course the course code that they're wanting it to align to and the experience. So that is then submitted and reviewed by the Kentucky Board of Education, and they will determine if it is a successful experience or if they want to accept that. So there is a link in that FAQ to that form for those that do not align with the normal standards of a co-op or internship. Next, please. Okay, continued. So the co-op and internship, which students are eligible. Okay, so the students who qualify for a co-op needs to have already completed the career pathway. So that's 4 credits in the pathway, or concurrently be taking a related career pathway course in addition to the co-op. So as I said, schools must use a valid CTE co-op or internship course code that is linked in that FAQ document. For students that are non-CTE students, the most typical, most commonly used course code is the experience-based course code, and that's 901005. I will also note that when using this course code, to be a little cautious, so there are keys issues, related to keys money that the students are getting. Keys issues to consider when using this course code. Those using it must have 4 courses not listed as work experience to be considered eligible for keys for that academic year. So just a side note. Next, please. Okay. All right, we can go past this one. I already said all that. Yes, see, okay, it needs to be at past 300 hours or more. Yes, okay. So on this one, I just wanted to give some screenshots of how it is entered in Infinite Campus. So since this is something new, it is a new collection for accountability. So I wanted to at least give a visual. I'm a very visual person. So you can see where you go to an Infinite Campus on the left side. And then this is what the career readiness tab looks like. So you're going to want to put the start date, the type, which will be a co-op, education, paid internship, or unpaid internship. If they passed, if there was a successful experience, and that will be a pass in the status. And then you will need to put in the hours. So that could be, you put in the hours at the end of the experience, or you can do the hours as the student goes. Next, please. And then lastly on this, there will need to be a course code entered. So on the second portion of that tab below, you'll have to enter a state course code. And again, it needs to be one of the eligible state course codes that is on that eligible list. And then you add it, and then you can put employer information down there if you'd like to keep track. And then you want to save that record and to ensure that it's saved in Infinite Campus. And next, coming soon, last slide. We are in CTE working on a post-secondary readiness report. Now, this is not just career readiness. This includes academic readiness as well. And there is already a similar report in Infinite Campus, but it's extremely outdated. So it's data collection that is no longer valid. So I've been working with another office. Actually, it's been a collaborative effort with different offices, since it's not just a CTE report. But I think it'd be great for districts to have in order to track their students. Where are they at on their journey? Like if they're a senior, like are they almost to, career ready or academic ready, or are they a senior and they're nowhere near? So it kind of helps you gauge, like, where is a student at to meet them where they're at and what needs to happen. I do want to note that this report is not an indication of accountability. OA has their own way of determining students who are post-secondary ready. So this is not to be used for accountability purposes. It's strictly just a tracker for your students to make sure that they're on the right track. So that's all I have today.
Thank you, Holly. There is just one piece I want to add to that. As Holly was showing you those last few slides, the piece that I forgot to mention was that, it's usually the counselor who meets with students, and they develop a learning plan for each student. So that's what she was kind of showing you. The post-secondary readiness is a system within the system, and the student has all these choices that they can choose from in order to be post-secondary ready. So, all right. Thank you, Holly. And Jennifer, I'll turn it back over to you. That concludes what we had.
Thank you, Shara, and thank you, Holly, so much for the all the good detail and the information around those post-secondary readiness indicator. So as you can see that, as Shara just mentioned, that our students have some decision making in there. It's supposed to be based on their career goals or their post-secondary goals of where they want to be and what is going to set them up for their next stage of their life. So there are options that the students can choose from. So there, whether they're academic or career options, and even within the academic or career, there are multiple ways of demonstrating their readiness for that. And of course, then the student then shows positively in the accountability system if they meet those benchmarks within each of those different options. Okay, we have a Jamboard here, and I'm really glad that people are making connections and writing some questions on that. So let's see if we can address some of these. Holly and Shara, I'm looking at when do students learn about their academic or career options so they can they are on task for success.
From what I know, and Holly or Jennifer, you can back me up on this. I believe as they enter high school, they start meeting with students and they start working with them as freshmen. I do believe. Holly, is that your interpretation of it as well?
That's my interpretation as well. I think, you know, I think as far as certain career indicators, so like co-ops or internships, that's probably not introduced until later on in their high school career, since you do have to complete certain courses in your pathway in order to be eligible for those options. But as far as dual credit, I mean, that's probably most schools' number one way to get students career or academic ready or post-secondary ready. So I would say it starts day one, they go into high school.
Yeah, that learning plan. Yes.
How is the community made aware of the options and encourage support the students in their community? Holly, I think that would be more toward the opportunities in the career base. Do you want to talk about how our career and technical education educators work collaboratively with our local businesses?
Definitely. So the best way I can think of is doing the apprenticeships. So that is a great way to make relationships with the workforce. So bridging that high school to workforce, if you're not interested or it's not in the plan to go to a college or, you know, a higher education after high school. We have a lot of what would you call it, work groups, where we incorporate lots of different industry personnel in those work groups. So it could be teachers, it could be someone who is high level in the industry, it could be us at KDE, and it really is a collaborative effort to figure out, okay, what's going to make the most sense. What is it that the industries are looking for students to have? So if there's a new pathway being created, then this is how that would be created. So it's not just something that it's, hey, this would be good or that would be good. It really is a collaborative effort from people who actually know. So that's the best way that the connection builds there. And then Mary Taylor, who is our track apprenticeship guru in OCTE, she's great at making those connections with employers and figuring out, you know, the best agreements and pointing students out in that way, and, you know, best way to serve everybody.
Great, thank you so much. I've been a career technical educator as well, and when I was in that field, we had to have advisory groups and advisory folks that were part of the local community. So when we brought together local business people and local craftsmen that were there, they would support and let us know. So we had that collaborative and open communication that we learned from each other and we supported each other too.
Yes, Jennifer, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that is still an ongoing process that we do. I think it's very important to hear from those that are actually out in the field.
Yes, and it's important that we get the local voice.
Yeah.
You know, things that are happening in, you know, the other side of Kentucky may not impact, but to have that local voice is powerful.
Yeah,
And it makes those connections that benefit the students.
it's true, because what could be important in Eastern Kentucky may not be as important in Western Kentucky and vice versa, so.
So let's take one more because we don't want to get too far off. And I see, Holly, that you have to leave. So let's take one more. Who makes the final determination about the success of an internship?
So for the success of an internship, that would be at the district level. So as I mentioned earlier, that is a discussion between whoever's responsible for that at the district. Now, that could be your counselor, that could be your CTE coordinator. I mean, as we know, there's many different hats that people wear at the district, so that could vary sometimes. But they're gonna want to communicate with that employer to see how that experience was. The student's gonna need to turn in, you know, any clock in, clock out hours, some feedback from the employer. And really, I mean, they're gonna have to talk to that employer to make sure it was successful or not. And if it wasn't, then you're gonna reflect that in Infinite Campus if it was, and that's how that will be reflected as well.
Right, great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll just real quick, counselors have supporting materials for students, and then parents are made aware. There are different pathways that students can choose from when they enter high school. There are parent nights. There's depending on the school that your child goes to, they could communicate in a variety of ways through email, through recruiting for the different programs and things like that. And those orientations, I found that are really good for parents to attend because you get to talk with directly with the counselors and have that those materials that provide the options for the students, especially as they enter into high school and they're choosing their pathways for the next 4 years. So I didn't want to leave those two questions unanswered. So Shara, Holly, appreciate your time and expertise. You're welcome to stay with us and engage and participate. But if not, I know you have to leave as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I would stay if I didn't have to go to my office-wide meeting, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I think the next slide is to introduce our vibrant learning experience. So we have Sarah Snipes from the Kentucky Department of Education and Karen Perry from the University of Kentucky, who is going to talk with us and give us some really good examples of and a definition of vibrant learning experiences and learning with leading. We do have a Jamboard. Again, it's the second Jamboard. And Suzanne, would you care to put the link to that
It's
in the chat?
the same link. It's just
Okay.
gonna, at the top of the Jamboard, you're just gonna click on the arrow to the second page. So
Okay.
there's like a second slide and it should say leading with learning at the top. What might be evidence, formal and informal and vibrant learning.
So then, thank you for that. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Sarah and Karen.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we're doing a little swapping of screen sharing here. So just want to check to see if folks can now see my screen and the definition of BLE. Perfect. Thanks for your patience. We've got a few videos for you all throughout our section. And so if I do a little swapping back and forth, I just appreciate the patience as we bring you all kind of a variety of examples today from BLE. But just to kick things off, as Karen talks a little bit here about our definition in a moment, wanted to kind of go back to what was said at the top of this call, where we really are starting to see this momentum around collaborating from Vibrant Learning Experiences across the committees as well, especially with the AISC and your work that you're doing around assessment and accountability. We're becoming kind of attached at the hip, if you will, even more so as our work progresses. And so we hope that you continue to see many, many connections today in our conversation. In fact, we hope to engage in a little bit of a discussion with you and sharing some of our thoughts around how assessment interacts with the Vibrant Learning Experiences that we're showing you today in these examples. So I'm going to kick it over to my wonderful friend Karen Perry, just to talk a little bit about where we have landed on a revised definition.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, greetings and salutations from VLE. We hope you're having a vibrant Monday. That's how we like to start all of our meetings. So Sarah has put up here on the screen for us some of the work that is coming out of the VLE Standing Committee that has been underway for quite some time. But we thought it was important to start our work in Vibrant Learning, really putting clear definition to what we really mean by vibrant learning. So we're offering it here for your consideration. Essentially, the tagline for vibrant learning is learning that matters to students. That is the necessary and essential core part of this definition of vibrant learning. That's really the shorthand of it. We put a little bit of more explanation underneath, and this definition that you're looking at reflects lots of feedback from not only our standing committee, but also Kentucky United We Learn more broadly, the local labs of learning districts who have been working on local accountability systems, but essentially in partnership with families and communities, which is really important to this entire effort. Students are agents of their own learning. So the idea that kids are making substantive decisions about what their learning looks like, and that they are engaged in relevant and authentic and joyful learning opportunities. Vibrant learning honors students' cultural wealth. So what do they bring to the table in terms of their own identity and their own background and their gifts and their interests? And it culminates in the application of knowledge and skills demonstrated through personalized products. And so you may notice about this definition that some of those words are very bold, very aspirational, and we intend to do everything we can to get every kid access to vibrant learning experiences every day. So we really mean every kid, and we really mean every day, and that is our goal. And so this definition has been approved by the Vibrant Learning Standing Committee. I believe it's gone to Kentucky United We Learn for voting and will be formally approved. I'm looking at Karen Dodd. Will be formally approved as part of our work. But we like to start here. Karen, is that right?
I was just going to say, I need to go back and look. That was before the holidays that we sent it out. I need to see how many people have responded, and if we have, we will have to schedule a meeting so that we can have the live voting.
Great, thank you. So it's in progress of being approved right now, but we like to start here and say this is the kind of learning that we're aspiring to establish for kids. And so now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah to walk us through some examples of what vibrant learning looks like in practice.
Thanks, Karen. So it's nearly impossible to kind of narrow down this definition into just a couple of videos, but in some of our earliest conversations with our Vibrant Learning Committee is we started to surface the types of teaching practices and instructional models that tend to yield more vibrant learning experiences in our classrooms. I just wanted to take out of this definition of VLE and kind of pull up an elementary, a middle, and a high school example for us to look at today. By no means is this an exhaustive list, of course, and we won't go through the full videos today, but you will have access to this if you don't already in those slides that were shared with you. They're all wonderful full videos to explore at your own time, and I encourage you to do so. So we're going to see if this works here in just a moment. I'll skip ahead for a minute, but want to just kind of preface this video, our elementary example. This is our only non-Kentucky example at the moment. Project-based learning, for those of you who aren't aware, is a statewide initiative provided through some of Kentucky's ESSER funding. And so our goal is to train 1/3 of Kentucky school teachers in gold standard project-based learning with a partnership from PBL Works. We have a broad reach and range of educators right now across our state engaging their students in project-based learning. We just don't quite have some published videos of that happening yet. So you won't see this example coming out of Kentucky like the others, but know that this is very similar to the experiences you would see in our local schools and districts. Hopefully you saw the real world connection, the project that's going to be the vehicle by which the students learn content, knowledge, and skills. And just appreciated both that this teacher had brought in real clients for that final product that these students are designing for and will present back to at the end of their work. And then the involvement of a field expert, even at the elementary school level, kind of connecting back to our last conversation as well, that he brought in actual artifacts and resources and knowledge from the field that these students are engaging with. If you continue watching this video, you'll actually see how this teacher has set up things like math stations and her reading centers and rotations as well, all centered around this project and its context. So really the driving force of the learning is this project. And here's just another example lifted up from what we are seeing and learning. One of our site visits actually for our Vibrant Learning Experiences Committee in our last year, and some of you all were actually able to attend, was to Eminence Independent Schools, where we were able to take a tour, learn from students, see classrooms in action. And this was actually a publication in a national education article and video that was produced from Edutopia to show how Eminence Independent Schools really leverages hands-on student learning experiences to get students engaged in their learning. So you see here an ELA classroom, an English language arts classroom at the middle grades level. They're in the middle of a novel study and involving their students in a Socratic seminar, but they're taking it a step further to create a really vibrant learning experience. And lastly, our high school example. You may know and love this chair of the United We Learn Council. Decided to pull this example with her permission. This is Audrey Gilbert in her junior year, now graduated from the Frankfurt High School. And this is actually from her junior defensive learning. And just want to preface this example by saying, while this defense in itself would be the assessment, where she's showing, kind of demonstrating and defending her learning throughout her 3 years in high school at this point. Want to kind of see the underlying vibrant learning experiences she had access to in creating this kind of portfolio, if you will, of those experiences as she defends and connects them to her local portrait of a learner. And ranging from elementary to high school in a few different contexts, different districts in our state. And just want to bridge that over a little bit as I pass things over to Karen again to think about this too from your all's perspective of assessment and accountability.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So yeah, as Sarah was just saying, one of the things that is true about vibrant learning is assessing vibrant learning is not the same as assessing in some more traditional formats. And so one of the things that we are observing across the state is that the assessment of vibrant learning is looking like a couple of different things. And so we drafted up here a couple of lanes of assessment of vibrant learning, one of which is just to assess a single performance task. This could be a small PBL, or it could be a larger project. Sorry. Sorry, my dog's are worse. Sarah, do you want to pick this up?
Sure can, Karen. So thinking about a very specific skill in an environment, we've got some examples laid out for you. You'll probably think about this in the form of a math problem, a multi-step math problem, right? Or an essay where students are asked to talk about empathy within a novel that they're reading. Really kind of looking across this chart, we also thought about this in terms of how audience varies for these performance assessments. So when thinking about a single performance task, often that's very limited to the classroom teacher, and it's scored against a set of criteria. And then in terms of accountability, very low stakes, right? This is often formative assessment meant to inform both the student and the teacher as the learning goes on, as a kind of a check-in on how that student is progressing in their learning journey. Karen, are you in a better space now?
Yeah.
I feel
Sorry about that. So I think when you think about Sarah just described across the from left to right here, the different elements of these different kinds of assessments, one of the things we were thinking about was stakes. One of the things we were thinking about was whether an assessment is formative or summative. And so you can see student-led conferencing where a kid would be sitting at a table talking about what their learning experience is, what they need from other folks. Pretty low stakes, but can be really formative and can really give a lot of information about what they know and what they don't know. As you move down the lines, though, to exhibition of learning and defensive learning, we start to get to higher stakes assessment here. I'll take exhibition of learning next. If you think about an exhibition of learning and what's different between exhibition of learning and defensive learning is that an exhibition is really just a showcase. It's a celebration. It's kids showing off their learning to an authentic audience of parents and community members and experts and peers. And so the stakes there are sort of medium high. You're probably not going to fail anything, but you want to make sure you're doing a good job. And it's a lot of intrinsic motivation going into an exhibition of learning, thinking about a showcase. The one that has probably the highest stakes that we're seeing begin to emerge, and this is happening in a number of districts across Kentucky now, is defenses of learning. So this is a rigorous assessment process where kids are defending their learning. Some folks call them presentations of learning, if defense feels a little too adversarial. But essentially it's a kid standing up and saying, I am competent at this thing, whether it's content or cross-curricular competency like communication or collaboration. They're presenting evidence that has been evaluated and juried. And they are oftentimes, this happens at a grade band where they're saying, I'm ready to move to middle school. So it could be a 5th grader saying, I'm ready to move to middle school. Or it could be an 8th grader saying, I'm ready to move to high school. Or a 12th grader saying, I'm ready for post-secondary experiences. And so we are seeing districts now getting better at these kinds of assessments that are often accommodating of broader aims. So to include portrait of a learner kinds of competencies, and kids getting better at the metacognition that goes into it, and also speaking in their own on their own behalf about their vibrant learning experiences. So this is not all the ways to assess learning by any means, but these are some ones that we're starting to see bubble up from across the state. So we wanted to offer this to you for your consideration here today. And then I think Sarah has pulled together this last thing, just resources for you. If you want to know more about this, if you're interested in seeing more examples, Sarah's pulled together some really good resources here for folks. A lot of the co-ops are doing really great work in this area, curating artifacts, evidence, examples of vibrant learning. You see here, OVEC, for example, has a whole series of things about deeper learning. So what it's looking like in classrooms. And these are real Kentuckians doing real vibrant learning things. And so this is just more examples for you to look at that Sarah's curated for you.
And Jennifer, if I'm correct, I think these went out in a pre-work email, perhaps, just really informative, especially our regional co-ops, as they've been given a statewide grant for deeper learning. That's been such a catalyst for the vibrant learning experiences that we've seen across the state, and grateful for our co-ops who've invested in a little bit of the storytelling so that we have a wealth of resources that we've referred often to within VLE. We've pointed our folks to those often in partnership with our co-ops. And so really just encourage you to check those out if you have time. You won't regret it.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Karen, very much. We did share those in a previous email, came from Kathy Stovall. We really appreciate Karen and Sarah for sharing those resources. Now, well, I had mentioned the design principles previously, and you can see where the design principles really connect to the vibrant learning experiences that they just shared, where the students and the student experiences and outcomes are prioritized. Our first three design principles, and those design principles are just the way that we as an accelerating innovation committee, after we researched those themes that kept coming up to us that really resonated with our committee, in that the design systems that supported vibrant learning experiences designed for marginalized students and keeping students at the center. And Azurdi, I appreciate everything that the DJJ has done toward project-based learning. And thank you for sharing that in the chat with us. And then our third principle, which is directly in line, is to empower the students to be agents of their own learning. So I think that we can see each of those design principles within the examples that that you all shared with us. So thank you so much for that. We have a link to those design principles in our chat as well. So those were pulled out of our report and made into a specific design principles for assessment and accountability system. So that is a document that kind of guides our work and provides us some direction on the things that we value. And thank you, Susan and Andre, for linking that document again for us, and resharing that. So any questions for Sarah and Karen before we transition? Let me pop over. How about the Jamboard? Do we have any questions in the Jamboard for them?
I believe we have a few connections and reflections. We'll for sure return to those
Okay.
as part of our brainstorming.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think the only thing, sorry, just to jump in, with our hat of assessment is like, what will KDE's role be in like helping co-create some of those like rubrics, or if it's something that's going to be, if we're going to be using project-based learn as a way of determining like standards understanding, like what will that look and sound like? Because like I saw the rubric that was posted and it's general, which I think that leaves a lot of like room for us to like make go from there. But I'm thinking like with my principal hat on, like, how do I, kind of give opportunities to my teachers to like see like what does a working rubric look and sound like, and then how will that translate statewide? Like if there's somebody in Hazard doing the same project, in order for it to count as part of our accountability system for like, is that where we're going? So just brainstorm what that might look and sound like. Do we co-create those? Does KDE create those and then we utilize it? Just wonderings.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Casey. And those are certainly the discussions that are going to be had, right? That those design principles and these examples are ways for us to move forward and to generate ideas. And those are really great questions that we will have to explore moving forward.
Can I speak quickly to maybe a combination of that one and the other one that I saw on the Jamboard that's also in the chat now, which is, are these experiences for lower literacy students and what support do they receive so they're not left behind? One of the things that we've seen, especially exhibitions of learning in elementary schools, one of the things that looks like is kids bringing parents in or other community members in and doing things that are on grade level in their classroom for them. So like just sitting down and reading with someone, or if they're practicing writing their name in kindergarten, maybe that's what they're exhibiting. So they're exhibiting things that are from the standards and from grade level expectations of learning, but it's in a much more sort of individualized way. So I think that actually gives a great potential for kids to be seen individually and assessed individually, and have their learning needs really seen in a different way than maybe some more traditional assessments can allow for. So we've seen exhibitions where kids, and I think into, is it Cassie or Casey point about, is it Cassie or Casey? Sorry.
Sorry, it's Cassie. But
Cassie,
either way, Cassie, Casey.
So the idea that a rubric would be written to not only have content specific expectations, but also expectations for kids being effective collaborators or communicators or creators. So rubrics being written that have both of those things in it. I think one of our learnings and our observations is that there is a real need to make sure that we're talking about kids understanding and mastering foundational skills, as well as the cross-curricular competencies, and to be very explicit about that when we talk about Portrait of a Learner. So it's really both things, and it can be both things at the same time. So I think we're observing that and seeing a growing understanding of the need for that across the state.
Karen, this is Andre. Hi. I know we've also been talking about the bank of resources, right? We have been throwing internally around that version of the notion of systems bank. And that brings up naturally then that question about how you understand the differences between the way the tasks are designed, how exhibitions, for example, are being held, what is being lifted up and foregrounded, and so on and so forth. Do you mind speaking a little bit, if you can, to your vision for how you want to bring some coherence maybe to that effort into the work across the different co-ops, for example, or across the state?
Yeah, and Sarah, jump into on this. I think one of the things that we're seeing is that there are districts who are really speeding out ahead on these defenses and these exhibitions, and they are developing things that are helpful to the rest of the to the field. And so what could we do to bring together those examples that already exist, but to do the kinds of things that we're talking about here, which is saying like, hey, did you think about maybe having both things be criteria for both standards and cross-curricular competencies, for example? So the first thing we need to do is really curate what's even out there. And then I think that we'd really love to see a world in which there's an exchange and a learning around these things, so that districts can build off of the hard-earned wisdom of those earlier districts.
Right.
And so in the system, of it all. We need to both have the content and the resources available for people, but also have the process
Right.
so that districts can and teachers and schools can really collaborate and learn together. And it's more of a collaboration than a competition. It's just
Right.
an important shift in the way we think about, I think, accountability and learning to maybe less with the competition, more with the
Right.
collaboration between
Right.
educators.
And Karen, just to add on to that too, I think as a mindset shift, the reason why I think districts in their efforts to transform the learning experience into more vibrant and deep opportunities for students is that we're really kind of flipping this into seeing assessment for learning.
Mhm.
And so even in those higher stakes defenses of learning, the process by which students have engaged deeply in reflection and collaboration to even get to that final product, right, has been a learning experience in and of itself. And so just to think about in your discussions and kind of what we hear from the field in this way is really just seeing us have a different mindset around assessment in that it does support learning in and of itself through that process.
I'd add one last thing. Agree, Sarah. Some good news is that lots of these things are already publicly available through websites. So Logan County, for example, has a ton of resources that they've developed that are publicly available. You can just go right to the Logan County Schools website, pull down all their rubrics, pull down their expectation, their continuum, all that stuff. I think what we need to do, though, is do some of that legwork to pull it together so that people don't have to navigate to all these varied places. What can we do to bring it together so that it's easy for people to access and compare and, you know, kind of use it as a menu from which to choose. So, yeah, that's just one of the things that we're observing thus far. And then the other piece of good news I'd say is that some of these districts who are the early jumpers took years and years and years to refine their system, but a second wave or a third wave of people can expedite quickly. That you don't have to scratch build things. You can build off of, you can stand on the shoulders of giants. So.
Great, thank you. I think that's a great place to end, standing on the shoulders of giants. Karen and Sarah, we will try to do that from your shoulders. At this point, I do think that we need a little break here. We've been going now for almost an hour and a half. Let's take a 15-minute break and come back. Well, let's take a 16-minute break and come back at 2:10. That sound good?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us back in our meeting. I don't think I shared I think I accidentally hit the wrong thing. Sorry. All right, I was gonna go to this. I'm gonna go to this tab. So, we are gonna spend a little bit of time digging in more on. Can you see the right thing, Susan? Okay, digging in a little more on these ideas of thinking about what are some possible menu options that would indicate deeper, more vibrant learning. But before we start that, we thought it would be good to look at some of the notes that we took so far in our meeting to kind of just prime the pump, to get us making those connections with the things that we've already learned about. So when we were thinking about post-secondary readiness, that was intentional because that's a model that already exists in Kentucky around a system of systems. So we've already made some connections there that might be relevant to our brainstorm when we break into that. So just noting some of those ideas that things like that there were multiple ways in which students could meet academic readiness and or career readiness, and there was a menu of lots of options. And that especially the experience-based work might be helpful to think about with this because it's not necessarily just an assessment, not just a test or so that was one thing that was highlighted, that the options sometimes were weighted differently. And that might be something that ends up being a conversation, and then they could also be stacked or standalone. So that might be something that we consider as well. And through the internships, the students were able to have some authentic learning and apply their learning in authentic ways. And that also was a time, I think, when the community was heavily involved, and seeing some of that, which was something that was valuable to us in terms of vibrant learning. On the next page, there were some notes around vibrant learning, about what might be some evidence, formal and informal. That table that was shared had a lot of information in it about ways in which that committee had already thought about informal and formal evidence. But in addition to that, we had some notes around students being involved with field experts, student products, whether they're individual or group, the defenses of learning, and there were some questions. How can we support teacher understanding when creating rubrics for PBL, especially if this will be a measure of accountability for standards? There's some other questions that I think were addressed during that conversation. So just wanted to revisit that. I don't know, Susan, if you wanted to chime in with anything else, or if anyone else wanted to.
Well, I just want to say thank you first off to everybody for sitting through what I know was a really long period of time where we just were sort of sitting and getting, but based on seeing what you've written in this Jamboard, it's evident to me that we're seeing the connections between our work, and ideally that'll set us up well going into this next section, which will be a lot more generative on your part. So Suzanne, did you want to kick off the brainstorming here?
I just wanted to check. All right. So I wanted to give us a few parameters when we're thinking about brainstorming. So this is really idea generation. We are not at a place where we're evaluating ideas. So this isn't a time, I give this example a lot now, but I love Ted Lasso. So there's a Ted Lasso quote where he says, don't bring an umbrella to my brainstorm. And this idea is that this isn't a time where we're thinking about what won't work or why we wouldn't want to be doing something. This is a time to just to generate ideas. And we will be thinking later about maybe how these which ones might be a better fit or a better place for us to start, or which ones might be more aligned to our design principles, or even how they might manifest. But we're not going to be, at this point in the process, really thinking about what doesn't work. We're just going to be generating ideas. And because of that, this isn't a time for deep discussion. So what we'll be doing is have a little bit of time for individual reflection before we go into the Jamboard. So it's helpful to even just without being in the Jamboard, just think a little bit as an individual, because then you're not seeing some of the other ideas that are popping up, and think about where your brain is going for a few minutes. So we'll do that first. And then we're going to go into small group breakout rooms. And even if you're not someone who's like a voting member of our committees, we really want you to be involved in our brainstorm, because these ideas will be helpful for us moving our work forward. And so we'll spend some time in small group, and then we'll come back together as a whole group to talk about those. When we're in the small groups, each small group is going to have their own Jamboard page. So you're going to be thinking and just really focused on your page, because we're going to look at the other pages collectively as a group when we come back together. And when we come back together, that's also an opportunity then where we can clarify and get into a deeper discussion. So this isn't a time to go down one rabbit hole, because we want to generate as many ideas as possible when we're thinking through this idea generation. So if you need to ask a clarifying question to one of your colleagues that you're really confused, we're not going to tell you to not do that, but there is a time later for that in the process to ask clarifying questions about what did you mean when you said that idea. So Susan, can you think of anything else before we
I would just, I think before we jump in, we should say the prompt, right? So what is it that we're brainstorming ideas about, right? So just like we have a post-secondary readiness indicator at the high school level, let's imagine and put ourselves in a place that we have a vibrant learning experiences indicator within our state accountability system. What might be the possible menu options that either schools or students could select into that would indicate that students are having deeper, more vibrant learning experiences? It could be at the school level, it could be at the student level. Really, nothing's off the table here. And as Suzanne said, Cassie and others, I'm going to urge you to not think about the operationalizing of this. Oh, who's going to write the rubric? How are we going to train the teachers? What about this for these students? What about this for these students? This is just a generation mode. What are all the possible ways that we might know that vibrant learning is happening at schools and that students are having these experiences? So Suzanne, should we jump into the initial just 3 minutes now? All right, I've got 3 minutes on my stopwatch. We'll go off camera, or you can stay on camera, take notes in your notebook, on your paper. We'll have some individual think time for 3 minutes before we go into small groups. We will hope that anybody who joins a small group is there to actively engage. It can be uncomfortable if you're in a group and you're not sure, okay, who's participating, who's not, who's on the hook for saying something. So we'll just make it the norm that if you're there in the small group, you're there to contribute and actively participate. I know we have some observers here, so if you feel like you can't engage in that way, please don't enter into a small group so that folks know if you're in a small group, you're there to engage and participate. Yes, we can post the Jamboard link. Darlene, are there any clarifying questions before we split into our groups? Or Suzanne, did I leave anything out?
I was just going to mention that we're planning on having 3 small groups, and there's 3 different pages in the Jamboard. So if you're in the first small group, if you'll just go to the first small group Jamboard, which is probably the 3rd page of the Jamboard, and the next small group, like small group 2 would be Jamboard 4, page 4, and the last one would be on the 5th page, the last page of the Jamboard right now. So we had talked about giving a pretty extensive period of time here in the small groups, but I don't know, Susan, if we want to set that time, or I was kind of thinking we may want to do an initial, like at least 15 minutes and then check in.
Exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, let's do 15 minutes. Yeah.
And then we can check in on groups and see how we're doing at 15.
So we'll plan to close the rooms around 2:40 Eastern time.
Susan, can I just lift one thing up quickly, which is we talked so much about the post-secondary academic and career readiness in this first part, and then vibrant learning experiences throughout all the grades and grade bands, really. And so this brainstorming activity is really to think about a system across all of the grade bands. So it's not just for the high school level. And I know that that means that you have to think maybe a little bit differently about what the evidence or the indicators might be looking like, how you want to lift that up. So if you're in a group, it might be helpful to sort of be also very clear about, you know, which of these grade bands or grades you're particularly thinking about.
All right, I'll open the group now. Just bear with me as I navigate Zoom for the umpteenth time here. All right, I think we're all back now. Welcome back. Suzanne, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So I think that we had like 3, from what I can gather, 3 pretty different conversations. So I think that coming together as a large group might really help us to get some different perspectives and thoughts and use of that time that we were in small groups. So thank you for your participation. I know that long virtual meetings can be trying, and sometimes these protocols feel very different virtually than they do in person. So thank you for trying this with us. So group 1 looks like you've done some organization of ideas. I don't know if there's somebody that wants to share out some of the things that you all were thinking in your conversation that you had that could share
Yeah.
it for us?
I mean, I can gladly do that. Get it started, and then Trevor and Darlene and Karen, you can chime in. It was the three of us, and Laura and I. So yeah, as you all can see here on this particular board, our conversation went back and forth around a few core ideas. The first one was sort of the idea of, well, what kind of evidence, or what are the mechanisms in which we could collect evidence about student learning? And that's what this higher level organization represents. So, we talked about, could we give surveys to capture parent and student perceptions about deeper learning experiences? Could we leverage observational or practice evidence? So people were talking about the idea that there are leadership walkthroughs, for example, that are happening already. Could those be leveraged with the addition of a rubric? Teacher evaluations are happening. So could the teacher maybe provide some additional reflection or documentation that is specifically about the design and implementation of deeper or vibrant learning experiences? Then there is evidence related to sort of outcomes, this idea of like work products that students produce naturally. So we talked about, portfolios, capstone projects, and then this idea of like, well, if there were some consensually agreed upon rubrics at certain levels, then could these be used to evaluate either sampling or those of individual students or for all students? Similarly, at the high school level, there was this idea that many of the offerings that currently exist under the career or academic and career readiness indicator, it really does contain naturally baked into them deeper learning and vibrant learning experiences. So one could review the design of those courses from the perspective of deeper and vibrant learning, and then potentially even partial out particular components that otherwise would not get partialed out at the aggregate level under the current system, and sort of then look at, either at the aggregate level, students in particular programs or in particular courses, or that complete particular aspects of these courses, again, without the students doing anything different necessarily, just doing sort of a critical analysis. And then finally, we talked about the connections, essentially system design considerations. So this idea of connecting work-based learning experiences and other experiential learning opportunities to the post-secondary readiness indicator with this. This is what I just was talking about. And then making sure that the evidence from teachers, students, and school leaders should be coupled and connected. And then we also talked about this idea that, as evidence gets collected, there's typically a really good opportunity to leverage that for resources, supports, and tools to scaffold the learning and professional development for the next generation or the next year of colleagues. And it's sort of like this vice versa relationship, right? So natural engagements can offer up some evidence, and when maybe new evidence gets collected, that may also then offer up future professional development opportunities. And one final thing very quickly is that I came back to this idea of trying to put, using as a mindset, this idea of like, what's already going on? What are like natural processes that people have already bought in, that are already being implemented, that could be maybe refined a little bit, or played with or re-architected, but do not require like a broad overall shift and a disruption of practices. So this came up at the teacher evaluations, the leadership walkthroughs, and portfolios, capstone projects that students were producing anyway. So we try to keep that in mind. And I'll stop there. And please, Trevor, Darlene, Karen, if you want to add anything, or Laura, obviously, feel free to do so.
I want to also encourage, if anyone listening that wasn't in this breakout room that has any clarifying questions for that group, to chime in with any questions you might have.
One thing I wanted to just also mention on the topic of sort of the scaffolding. And so part of that is thinking about, it's hard when you're brainstorming to kind of sometimes stay just in the lane of like, what are the ideas of what the evidence is? Because we're thinking about the full educational experience. I think when it comes to scaffolding, part of this was also a topic, this was in the lens of like inclusivity. How do we make sure that each menu item has an entry point for each and every student, that it's accessible to all students, as well as sort of thinking about how the resources from the system can in turn support students.
really like how you've categorized your options. We were playing around with that a little bit in our group in group 3. And this sort of framework is really helpful. So I was sort of thinking more content-based categorizations of things, but this sort of type of evidence is helpful.
So I have a question. Did you guys think about, and maybe I missed it, the experiences in the observational practices and evidence, the experiences of the students, how they reflect on that experience, not just in their presentation, but the overall experience so that it can be improved upon and looked at in the future?
I think that was meant to be this. I'm sorry, Andre. I think that was meant to be under reflection. So the surveys provide a space to capture student experience. I think that's what we, where we were sort of situating that. But you're exactly right. We did talk about, to your point, we did discuss that the way students experience their learning really matters when we're trying to capture something that we're defining as vibrant and relevant to them.
Yeah, and I would say we didn't go into Kathy, into the weeds about like, how would we go about different methods, like focus groups, individual one-on-one conversations, or is it surveys, like what's better under what conditions? We just didn't have the time to do that. Would you like to offer anything up there?
Me?
Yeah, that you brought it up. Why not?
No, I was just sitting here. No, I was just sitting here thinking about it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yeah.
I'm always thinking differently from everyone else, but it's just that we got these students going through all of this, and I know they're going to do their presentations and there's going to be their projects that they complete and everything.
Right.
But how did they really feel about that experience, and what did they gain from that experience that we may be able to use to actually continue to develop the menu of options? So that was what I was thinking about.
Yeah, and I'll just say very quickly, I think it's really good point, right? And so it's like, this shows us all, right, like what the next steps are. So the idea is to agree upon like categories or ideas or sets of desirable sources of evidence, or that we want to have some information on. Then we can talk about, what are different trade-offs between methods, and vice versa. Also doing some in parallel learning about what's currently going on in the VLE colleagues. They know a lot about what's going on in individual districts in the L3s and co-ops, and sort of saying and sort of testing ideas out and getting early feedback over like what's feasible, what's already happening, right? I think a lot of this is also that we don't sometimes quite know, for people who have deeply committed to the deeper learning and PBL works programs, for example, what they're already naturally exactly collecting at what cadence and with what like agreements to share. So we need to figure that out. Yeah.
So one thing that I'm noticing is that we're naturally falling into some good discussion about these brainstorm items. And I'm already seeing people using what is a really important framing for that, which is that we're lifting up the things that we find really validating or we're excited about or that are helpful to us. And so that is considered like advocating, so that you're then saying, yeah, plus one, or yes, I like that too. That was helpful for me to either have it organized this way. It's helpful for me. When Kathy asked her question about student reflections, and that was something that was a part of that conversation. It started as a clarifying question, but then it also became a conversation about that would be important to Kathy, that, and that was important to the group too. So that can be a way for us to find some agreement and to advocate for things. And it's just really important in these conversations that we're stating those things in the positive, rather than looking at someone's board and saying an evaluative comment about that's not going to work, or I don't like that idea as much as this one. Just really advocating on the positives for the things that we're seeing on boards. Are there any other thoughts or comments about group 1 that we want to continue while we're here? We can always come back to this, but if you have things that you want to add or ask?
Suzanne, I was just really taken by, there's a box that talks about the rubric for various work products under the capstone project, which I think could also be related to the other kinds of experiences that are mentioned in the other observations and considerations. Because it seems like a way to illuminate the deeper learning and vibrant learning that exists in those experiences. I think if they just get translated saying, well, these are now vibrant learning, these are now deeper learning experiences, people won't necessarily understand how are they deeper, how are they vibrant, and this could really help do that if that was done across the districts.
Great. Should we move on to group 2 then, Suzanne?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Now, group 2, I was in this group for a little bit, and I'm gonna let the other members of this group share about the conversation that was there. Kathy, you're muted if you're trying to share.
Sorry, trying to do too many things at once. One of our members had to leave, Delaney had to leave, so I asked him if he wanted to go ahead and, give his thoughts and comments. And one of the things that I did write on our Jamboard, and you guys may want to elaborate on it, is he talked about what experiences would give confidence for learning. And that was really something that I had never thought about, the confidence. And it goes back to, I think, what you guys were talking, what I asked with that question about students' responses to being a part of that, of whatever pathway they choose. So we talked about connecting learning to classroom and what's next after we connect the learning to the classroom, and the importance of being able to assess or self-assess how well you're doing or what you've done. And then, sorry, I can't see, the role that community plays, and it's the role that community plays in, oh, okay, it's gone. I could see, that's okay, I just made my screen bigger.
I'm trying to make it bigger. I'm sorry,
Thank
Kathy.
you for
There you
helping
go.
me. And then mentioning what it means for community. We're not just talking about the employees in the community, but thinking about a self-assessment of ourselves in terms of our parents, as well as community members. When kids start to graduate from high school, what's the role that parents play, how they feel that they played a role in the success of their students. Project specificity of subject, community, and service and products. Suzanne, I think, were you the one that kind of mentioned that? I can't remember exactly what you were saying. The specificity?
That was from Joel. I was just capturing some of Joel's thoughts.
Okay. Joel, you still on?
I'm still here. Yeah, well, I was thinking about menu options, and I thought that one of those options might be I can't say it now.
That's okay.
Specificity of the subject. Like, for instance, if you were studying a really broad topic like American history, and you're going to have a project-based learning, you'd probably want to narrow the scope of that down some, or whatever content area you're in. Make sure that it's something that's manageable. Some of the other things that we talked about were what's the end point of this? What will there be a community service project? Just a demonstration of knowledge? Will there be a product that comes out of this? And then the other thing that we talked about is, how will this be assessed? Will there be a self-assessment component to it? Will there be peer review where your fellow students are looking at it? And maybe a panel of experts at the end.
I wanted to also point out that this question in green at the bottom
Yeah.
was something that came up in the conversation with the group, that I think this was when I was in the room, this was I think a big point, and a majority of conversation was around this idea of what's the ultimate goal of this indicator. And there was some question around if it's really about if it's about readiness, we already have some readiness indicators. Is this different, or do we, what is the purpose of it? Is it on academic attainment, student outcomes? Is it that they just received some kind of vibrant learning experience? Is it something about the culture and the environment? And based on what the purpose and the ultimate goal is, that would really help to drive where we lean into these different options. And that looks like Penny has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Penny, I
sorry.
hope you bring us back to our moonshot. I know you were involved in that.
Sorry, I'm not alone, which is why my video is not on. But first thing, as a member of VLE, when we first started talking about, this was one of our original big, hairy, audacious goals, right? The purpose was originally for, and I think it's morphed into something else now, if we look at this, and this is when we get to group 3, I'll get into that. But it was a clearinghouse to be able to identify and house where whoever we is, were able to share, and teachers and districts could share examples of vibrant learning. It was nothing in terms of assessment, nothing along those lines. This was literally supposed to be a clearinghouse, a resource, if you will. So if something is going on in Northern Kentucky that's amazing, can someone from Western Kentucky access this website or access this clearinghouse and say, hey, maybe this could work in my 6th grade class doing 6th grade science or whatever it is, right? There was no assessment or evaluative component to it originally. When our charge was about identifying vibrant learning experiences, and that was what the goal was.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful, because I think we kind of have a lot of different things happening in this multifaceted project. And to me, Penny, correct me if I'm wrong, to me, what you are describing sounds like the purpose of the systems bank.
Yes, we discussed that before the systems came into play, but yes.
Yep. And so I think that's a crucial element in paving the way on the path towards our moonshot. But from my understanding, the moonshot is really about changing accountability so that it's meaningful and is supportive of the spread of more vibrant learning experiences for all students in the state. So what we're talking about here is, how might accountability play a role in supporting the spread of more vibrant learning experiences? Where our committee has landed in the past is, okay, maybe we need a menu of options indicator. So what are all those things that could be comprised within that indicator that would indicate that, yes, we are on the path to creating more vibrant learning experiences for all of Kentucky students throughout the state. So I think this question in green, I'm so glad that it's here, because it inspires a really important discussion. Is it that we want to make sure that all students are reaching some level of deeper learning or more vibrant learning? Or is it just that we want to see that schools have processes in place to create, or their teachers are certified to create, project-based learning experiences that are really meaningful, or that students are engaged in internships and it's really not the outcome we care about, it's more the experience we care about? I think these are all things we need to discuss and work out that we don't have answers to yet. That's why this conversation is so generative and important and meaningful. It's sort of like, let's throw out all the ideas on the table in terms of what might indicate that vibrant learning is happening in the state, so that we can sort of work through them and evaluate them against our principles and against the logistics and in terms of thinking about the future of accountability. Is that helpful or hurtful, or does it bring other questions to the forefront? Is there anything else for group 2? Were there other ideas discussed that we don't see on this slide or that you don't feel like justice was given to in sharing out? With Jennifer, go ahead, Jennifer.
Other parts of the conversation were around clarifying and understanding the current system and the indicator of post-secondary readiness that we heard earlier. So the Jamboard represents our discussion.
I'm having a panic because I just switched to group 3 and I'm not seeing any of our many post-its, not to be competitive, but we had the most number of
There
post-its.
were a ton there, and now I don't see any. I wonder if somebody hit clear frame. I wonder if I can undo that.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Oh yeah, there were a
Yeah, I
lot
don't undo.
there. I had looked at them.
This is the good thing. This is Google, and I have faith that we can restore it. I don't have faith that we can restore it live, however. So
When I-
perhaps.
Well,
Oh,
when
go
I
ahead.
go to undo, it's changing group 2. It's not changing group 3.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go to our version history and hope that it's in there somewhere. But perhaps maybe one of our group 3 members, just in the interest of time, might be able to lift up some of the ideas that we discussed while we try and work this out. Paul, you were an active member of that group.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start. I know Penny's got a number of thoughts as well. A number of our folks, I think, have left the meeting, so just want to note that. But I would say that we did have a lot of stickies up there, which were essentially a great number of possible options for, oh, looks like we have it back. So as you can see, it's just many of them are possible options or menu of options of demonstrating deeper or vibrant learning. Just various ways of examples, some of which were already captured from the earlier presentation, and then others that were perhaps new or kind of a twist on those. So I won't go into those individually, but then there was a bit of a conversation about how do you know that students are in fact attaining a certain expectation. We talked about portrait, for example, a portrait of a graduate, and how might we know that they would be capturing, demonstrating those particular skills. One of the stickies here talks about a rubric to measure competencies and durable skills. One of the members of the meeting talked about North Carolina they're currently building a system to capture student attainment of durable skills. And then we also had a conversation about, so you have that kind of a system, but does that address the issue of going deeper for student agency? And then we had a conversation which was more valuable. I'm not sure we came to an end result there, but I do think Cassie made a particularly strong case for the fact that if we don't have a way in which we're essentially ensuring that students have core basic skills like reading by a certain grade level, 3rd grade, then many of these other experiences will not in fact end up being deeper learning experiences because the students won't have the skill set to make meaning of it. I'm not sure that's captured here, but it was a point of conversation that she raised. I'll stop there, and others who were in the meeting, I'm sure, have a lot more to say.
Penny, would you mind sharing your amendment to our question? I thought that was really powerful. And for those of us who haven't been as involved in the vibrant learning conversation, maybe you could help us understand how do you all in your committee see the difference between deeper learning and vibrant learning experiences? Because that seems like an important distinction for us.
Yeah. So I had I always have issues, but as far as the question is concerned, I said that the question to me seemed incomplete because, first of all, deeper learning is not necessarily vibrant learning, and they should not be included in the same conversation. And as our group, as far as our group is concerned, vibrant learning experiences was our task. That was our charge. That was our focus. Deeper learning was never in the picture as far as that goes. The second thing is this question, I believe, needs to include the word effective, because what we're looking at, what are the possible indicator options that would, menu options that would indicate more that you have vibrant or deeper learning. I would argue that we need to have effective, vibrant learning, because you can have project-based learning, you can have these wonderful experiences, and these kids can have agency and they can have fun in the classroom, and these wonderful things can happen. But if it's not effective and these babies aren't learning and it's not an equitable opportunity, then it's all for naught. So I think the word effective needs to be in that question. And it goes back to what Cassie said. High school should not be the only focus here. When we're talking about vibrant learning experiences, we're talking K-12. Because you can identify a whole lot of issues and situations by third grade that you can address, so that by the time they're in high school and they have to focus on these things, that you've identified them and you're getting them the help that they need. Because I can tell you right now, of my 4 kids, 2 would never present or defend. They physically and emotionally would not do that. So when we talk about these opportunities, that's what I mean when I say effective. If it doesn't reach every kid and you can't amend it or accommodate for it, then it's going to be a problem.
Thank you, Penny. And thank you, Suzanne, for capturing that in the chat. Trevor.
Turned off the editing so we didn't accidentally delete the constant notes again.
Trevor?
Yeah, sorry, Andre, for I guess my mic cut out or something while I was in that thing, so I had to log off for a second, and I don't know what happened really, but looking at this from group 3, I just thought we could add something to it, and this is something that is very beneficial for my own life and like going through school and everything, was after school programs. Usually these things for me would always last till 5. We had one called Reading Rocks, we had another one in middle school. And all that stuff was very beneficial for me, because one, like I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. That gave us something to do. When like your Walmart's the size of a Dollar General, that's all you have going on in that town, I guess. And so, and not only was it, we were learning, reading skills and all kinds of stuff like that, but it was also enjoyable for kids. And I think that's a lot of the fight when you're trying to make learning vibrant, is that it has to be in some way enjoyable. It has to be educational, but kids have to see the value in it as well. And a lot of times making something fun is a way to do that. So I think that'd be a really cool thing to add, maybe.
Fantastic. Thank you, Trevor. Any other additions, clarifying questions, comments related to Group 3's work here?
Not specifically group 3, but all 3 of the groups, actually. When I look at these sticky notes and I see that the heavy lifting is all the babies, right? All these things that the kids are going to do. And when we're still at the core, we're talking about assessment and accountability. I need to see accountability where educators are concerned. What are the teachers doing? So if I'm looking at this menu I look at the menu options and I see this clearinghouse, I need evidence that the teachers are effective. What does that look like? Couldn't tell you. But I need to know that, wow, you have all of these kids doing these things, and these kids have the buy-in, and these kids are doing all this work, and then you have peer reviews, and the kids, and the kids, and the kids. Very little conversation here is about what the teachers and educators are doing. And that's extremely important when you're going to have vibrant learning experiences, right? Biases will come into play. What does vibrant learning look like in a classroom where she or he cannot meet everyone's needs. So again, coming back to assessment and accountability, if that's our moonshot, how do we identify that the teachers are doing their part and not just the kids?
Penny, I just want to respond to that quickly. Thank you for that point. Obviously I was only in group 1, but I want to highlight that we did talk about that. I just want to mention it because I think we agree with you. And that's why you see some sort of observational and practice. That was like one of the categories we had, because we felt that our hope at least was that that started to capture this idea that adults are doing things to create vibrant learning communities. And if our goal is to make sure that every student is part of a vibrant learning community, that there are things we could measure that have to do with the things adults are doing to create that space and those experiences. So I just wanted to, I guess, +1 what you just said from at least my perspective of a conversation in group 1. So thank you for that point. I think it's really, really important.
Penny, can I ask you quickly, in your committee, do you have a theory of action for the vibrant learning work that you are engaging in some way, either graphically or narratively? I know we're sort of talking around that essentially right now, like what needs to be in place at different levels. But I think we need this really at the Cool Council level. We've been talking about this back and forth so we can sort of really make critical judgments about implementation approaches eventually. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah. One thing we talked, and we did end up, stuck in some mud when we did talk about just that, right? So it's not just what's going to be in it. It's who's going to determine what goes in? What is the criteria for that, right? And that's where we really did get stuck. And then it was time for the convening, and then we kind of, pushed it back. Right. But that's a huge, huge issue. Is it's not just going to be us determining, it's not going to be personal. It's like Andre went to this school. Hey, that's a great example of vibrant learning. My kid went to that school. That's a great opportunity, right? And it's going to be it's subjective on so many levels, right?
Yeah.
So identifying that is extremely important.
Yeah, but I want to lift up, I think that this is a really good, we talked about collaboration across the committees in the next few weeks. I think this will be a really good opportunity for that, right? Like you share where your head is at right now. Yeah. Then we talk about sort of the implementation and evaluation plans and different ways of working that through. And then, because it's not the same thing, but it's definitely connected and it's important to think about. So I think we should do that.
Right. So we have about 7 minutes, and we feel good about the way that our idea generation and conversation has gone. So thank you for your participation and all of the different things that we've had so far. Susan and I were going to pass it back to Jennifer and Kathy for some conversation about next steps and wrapping it up.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody. This was awesome. It was an awesome conversation. We're so glad that all of you were able to join us. We had a few concerns, who's going to be able to come and how many? Well, I've been counting ever since we've been. I just wanted to count our committee, and our committee, thank you all the committee members that showed up and has contributed to this conversation. And we are excited about continuing our conversation. So our next steps are to follow up on any questions that were not answered. So we heard questions that were asked, and we plan on doing our best to follow up on those. And we will also share today's conversation with and ideas that we gathered with the BNF and the VLE committees for their input, continued input, because we know everyone could make it, and that's okay. We're just happy that, you made the effort to be a part of this. And at the BNF meeting this month, I think it's this week, Susan Lyons will be bringing a presentation to them, just giving them an update on our meeting and where we are hoping to go in terms of collecting feedback from our committees and to discuss what the next steps are. Now, we will have our next meeting, our committee, Accelerating Innovation. We're going to have our next meeting on February the 5th. And guess what? You're all invited. You can come anytime you want. Our door is always open. It's from 5 to 6 p.m. And we're trying a few different things, a few things that are different from what we did last year. We heard from our committee members that times needed to be changed and that there was things that they needed to help them to be a part of our committee meetings. And so we're doing this February 5th from 5 to 6, so it's just 1 hour. And again, everybody that's on right now, and if you know any friends that want to join on from your committees, tell them to come on and join us. We'd love to have them. And that's pretty much it for me. We will follow up. I took a lot of notes and I thought, oh, I'll share some things, too much to share. So I'm going to go over and turn it over to Jennifer. Jennifer, thank you so much. And Susan and Andre and Laura, you guys are awesome in terms of supporting us and helping to facilitate what we're doing. And we really and truly appreciate you all. Sometimes we don't say those things and we should, but you are greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for your support.
Kathy, as are you and Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne, for leading us, and Kathy for your contributions and your guidance as well. And as Kathy mentioned, we are trying to do new and innovative things here and engage you in different ways and at different time frames. Our next meeting is February 5th from 5 to 6, as Kathy said. Please join us if you can, and we appreciate and value your input. So you all, until then, please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.